You can go.
Hi, everyone. As a preliminary matter, this is Hillary Hedges Rayport, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission. I'm going to permit that everyone is present and can hear me. So when I call your name, I'll just call you in the order that I see you. Don DeMichelle.
Here.
Angus McLeod.
Here.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
David Silver.
Here.
Georgia Raisman.
Here.
Ben Norman.
Here.
And we have staff Holly Backus.
Present.
And some guests, Betsy Tyler. I didn't hear you, but I could see you. And also Rita Carr from the Nantucket Preservation Trust. Hi, Rita. And joining now, we have our Select Board Liaison, Dawn Hill-Holgate. Dawn, if you can just confirm that you can hear us when you're in.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thanks. And we have another guest, Marty Hilton from the Preservation Institute Nantucket. Marty, can you hear us? Hi, thanks for being here.
I can hear you. Yep.
Great. And we'll be joined a little bit later by Esther Lee Stone to talk about her proposed preservation exhibit. Okay, so good morning. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order March 12th, 2020, due to the state of COVID. We are being advised and directed to suspend public gatherings, and we are meeting by Zoom. The agenda and material is posted. We will feature public comment at this meeting. The agenda and everything is on the town website with the link. The meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference or dial-in teleconference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast will be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided, are on the town website. The public is encouraged to follow along. So we're turning to the first item on the agenda. Please, I will introduce speakers. Please make sure you identify yourself before you speak to facilitate taking minutes and for the benefit of the public and the recording. Please be sure to mute your phone when you're not speaking, speak clearly. And if there's a need for response, please wait until I yield the floor to you so that we can have an orderly meeting. Every vote will be taken by a roll call vote. Okay, so welcome everybody. I want to ask if we have any public comment for items not on our agenda. I don't see any members of the public here. I also do see that Tom Montgomery, one of our commissioners, is still having problems dialing in. Holly, can you see if you can reach out to Tom and help him get in? I mean, I don't know why he can't dial in with his phone. I just want to make sure he gets a chance to participate. Okay, approval of minutes. So I did circulate some minutes that David prepared of our last meeting 2 weeks ago. I don't know if, did the people who attended that meeting have a chance to review those minutes? And can anyone make a motion? If anyone feels they didn't have enough time to review the minutes, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
I read and I'll take a motion.
Okay, Angus, a
Make the
second.
motion.
Okay, I see Georgia seconding the motion. All in favor. Don? I don't remember. Okay, obviously don't vote if I call you and you weren't at the meeting, please don't vote. So Don says aye. Mickey?
Aye.
Aye. David?
Aye.
Ben was not there. I am also an aye. So the minutes of the January 5th meeting are approved. Announcements. I want to make a brief announcement. I let the Historic District Commission know this. There was some coverage in the newspaper that came out yesterday about 27 North Liberty Street, and the paper pulled out a provocative quote, and they put my name associated with the quote, and it's not something I said. It's not something I would say. And it was really upsetting to me to have my name associated with something I didn't say, especially something provocative like that I wouldn't say. So I contacted the newspaper, the author, and he apologized profusely. It was like a production error, I guess, because the quote was appropriately identified in the newspaper. So I feel really badly about that. I mean, I was attending that meeting and speaking as an individual, but of course, whatever I say does reflect on the commission. So I was really careful in what I said. But the paper is going to be fixing the online edition and also writing like a retraction or correction in the next issue in a week. But I just wanted to make it clear to all of you that, you know, I would never assume to like tell the HTC what they should do and accuse them of, you know, stuff. So I just wanted to announce that in a public forum. We all have a second announcement, which is Resilient Nantucket Toolkit discussion. Holly, can you tell us a little bit about the discussion that's going to happen at 1?
Yes, at 1 o'clock today, our consultant for Resilient Nantucket, Lisa Craig, will be before the HDC to go over the toolkit. And the toolkit is what the average person can use to basically protect their structure from obviously hazards. And it's going to be fairly in depth, but it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation. And then there's going to be an introduction to the Coastal Resiliency Plan. This is going to be, I think, very beneficial for everybody to understand the links between the efforts that the town is doing with Resilient Nantucket, the MVP Action Grant project, to create those design guidelines, and where the Coastal Resiliency Plan is going to fit in. One great thing about it is our consultant for Resilient Nantucket, Lisa Craig, is also a co-consultant with Arcadis, who is the consultant for the Coastal Resiliency Plan, and that's getting it kicking off with the town and having, I believe, an open forum, like an open house at the end of the month, which the consultant will be able to address that this afternoon. For housekeeping concerns with open meeting law concerns, that meeting has been posted for you all as a possible attendee. So if you do want to attend, I would actually request if you could just let me know ahead of time if we have a quorum. That way Hillary can sign, you know, and call that meeting to order after the HDC chair. But we're covered on that end. Please participate. This is an HDC meeting, but you all are a part of this important conversation. And then if you wouldn't mind, Hillary, I just also wanted to mention to the commissioners that are not aware, this past week on Wednesday, thanks to our chair, Don Hill-Holgate of the Select Board, we have been blessed, if you will, to move forward with the application to the Massachusetts Historical Commission for the Certified Local Government application. So this is the first step in that process. And hopefully we get that blessing from them, and it will get pushed on to the National Park Service for their final approval. So just wanted to let you all know that important effort for our National Historic Landmark. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Holly, and congratulations. I know this is something that you've aspired to since you were like 16. So it's fantastic that we're going to be making this application. And we'll talk a little bit about the grant. It is on our agenda, and this application is related to the grant. So great. Now we're going to talk a little bit about setting our objectives and key results for 2021. I hope I can share my screen.
You should be able to.
Okay. Share. Okay. So this is what was in your packet. This is just a Word document so that I can, you know, edit it as we talk. I'm trying to think about the best way to structure this discussion. You know, I think it might actually be helpful to just talk a little bit about why we set goals and how we set results to support those goals. I'm now trying to stop my screen share so that I can share something different, which is, are you seeing my screen?
Yes,
Do you see me trying to open Excel?
no,
You don't.
If you need to go into a different application, you're gonna have to get out of this and then go back into it.
Okay,
So stop
The
share
thing is-
screening and then you,
it's not letting me stop my screen share. Well, while I try to sort out these technical difficulties, I'll talk to you a little bit about objectives and key results. So this is actually a way of looking that comes from Google. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. The host has stopped my sharing. Okay, so now let me try to open. I think my computer is just super slow. So the idea here is that you set a really big, ambitious goal. You don't get yourself deterred about the fact that it's ambitious. I mean, obviously you want it to be something that is possible to achieve. Like, we're not going to send anyone to the moon from the Historical Commission, but something that is ambitious and important. And then you identify some key results that if you're able to achieve, you will likely achieve the goal. So it's just a way to think about structuring our big goal, being able to kind of chip away at a big goal that is important by identifying some smaller goals where, you know, we can put some activities around and work on the smaller goals, and then we'll further our larger goal. So I actually never shared it with anybody, but I had, I'm trying to share them now. I had personal objectives and key results, which I'm trying to share with you, and it's not working. But for instance, one of the, I'll just tell you about them. One of the objectives and key results that I had on my list personally for the year, wait, here, maybe it's not gonna work, shit, was that the HCC and the NHC work together and help each other. And I had a bunch of key results under that. One was develop an MOU of HCC NHC operations. The other was mutually agree to 3 key improvements, and the other was to create a historic preservation scorecard. I had another objective, which was to build the historic structure and asset survey. And I had some objectives under that, like to identify what surveys currently exist, to create a statement of need and use that's developed and endorsed by all of the different commissions, and to create a project plan and budget. And then I also had an objective, which was to build the effectiveness of the Historical Commission. And the key results under that were to report at least 3 select board meetings, to help establish the Community Foundation Project Fund, and to establish how we will contribute to the master plan effort. So I just felt, I didn't share these with you. I kept them as like personal goals because everything just felt so new. And of course the world was so strange that it was, I don't know, it just seemed like maybe that was something I should just try to work on personally. I'm sorry, I'm speaking very slowly because at the same time I'm trying to, my screen is completely frozen, and I can't get out, I can't share my screen, I can't get out of this crazy window that I see in Zoom. So I apologize. I think I might actually have to just leave the meeting and dial back in. Can you guys just bear with me? I'm gonna leave and come back in. I can't even leave and come back in.
David, I guess for the record, you just want to notate that Hillary had to step out and we're, I guess, quiet for a minute.
Yes, I got it. Thanks, Holly.
Don't put that she resigned, David. While Hillary's signing back in all the goal setting that I've done for corporations, it's always the big BHAG, which is big, hairy, audacious goal. Pick something that you want to go after that's really big. And then what are your measures? And the measures are not activities. They're actually hopefully numerical in nature or some form of solid result that you can say. And then as Hillary was talking about her sub goals, a lot of those are activities that you need to accomplish to get to the final goal. So I think her format is similar to what we would do in the corporation, except that we would try and put a real firm measure on the result. And then all the activities underneath it would be milestones that say, if we do these, we'll get finally to the measure that we're looking for. So I think what she's proposing makes a lot of sense, even though I haven't seen those.
Hi, I'm back.
Ah,
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
I see that we have someone dialed in on the phone. Is that you, Tom?
No, does my name show up on one of the blocks here? It says Tom Montgomery?
We see your name, but we also see someone who's on the phone.
That's, well, that must be me. I don't know why they have me in two places, but I'm on the phone.
Yeah, so you've actually successfully cloned yourself, Tom?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad you can participate now. All right, I am going to try one more time to share my screen, and I'm going to show you an objective and key results. So do you see this now?
Mm-hmm.
You see an NHC OKR scorecard. Great. Okay, so this is something I downloaded from a Google project. I find it a very helpful way to manage. And this is something that if we really want to use it this year, we would agree to these objectives like HCC and HNC support and help each other. And then we would have these key results and we would rate ourselves. And looking back, it's kind of interesting. Like, I actually don't think these really were realistic key results. But nonetheless, I do think we made progress against this goal. I think we made a lot of progress. And I think now that we've been at this for a year and a half, we can probably make better goals and better key results because we know better about, what needs to be done. But some of these goals were more, appropriate and on target, like build the historic structure asset survey. And I think just looking back, we spent a lot of time talking about how to get these surveys done. We finally decided that we just needed to apply for a grant and do the survey plan. But I think all of that work that we did talking about different approaches to surveys, like for a while, we thought maybe it could be a volunteer effort from the community. That all of that was interesting. I did personally help establish the Community Foundation Project Fund, which paid for the engineering study and might, pay for other things going forward. So that was a success. You can see that screen. And we did report, I don't know if we reported at 3, but if you include Holly's presentation, I think we also achieved that. And I think we did build the effectiveness of the Historical Commission. So now we can create new goals and we can think hopefully in terms of the big goal versus these smaller key results, which are also goals, but they're supporting goals. Does that make sense to everybody? Any comments about that before we kind of dig into setting what our goals might be and our key results might be?
Can I say something,
Hillary?
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
I don't
I don't
know.
know if anybody got, I don't know if everyone got what Brian had texted earlier this morning, just before the meeting, but he had mentioned that Michael Stennis has a tendency to keep things close to the chest, but because Brian knows him well, he said we could multiply whatever he said times 4, which was really a good thing. So I think we've done the right thing as far as the Massachusetts Historical Commission is concerned. It sounds like they're really on board.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about, so what Tom is referring to is an email from Brian Pfeiffer that went to some of us that have been supporting the grant writing process. And I guess I can just let you know, I mean, we're gonna have an update on the grant. So why don't I, Tom, thank you for that message of cheer, and we can go into it more when we get to this topic about the grant application.
Okay.
So here right now on my screen, do you guys all see a Word document with goals for 2021? Okay, so I have put down the things that people shared with me when we talked in the last meeting. I also got some comments from Clement, who can't be with us today, to share with you, and some comments from David about some things that he would like to work on. But some of the themes were surveys, receiving the grant, start updating the surveys, have a master survey plan well underway for the entire National Historic Landmark, secure ongoing funding to complete the survey, which will be a multi-year, it might even be a 10-year effort. So the pavement work, kind of making that actionable. Become a CLG, so continue with our training and development, address archaeology, increased and broaden public awareness of preservation, that it's not just preservation, but also what is authentic, what is sustainable. Historic houses are often affordable houses. Bring in the real estate professionals, do a listening tour, inspire people to keep historic homes historic. Have conversations with other groups like the Black Homeowners Association, the Realtors groups, the Home Builders Association, bring in the younger generation. And I think also build public awareness of what we've lost, which is sort of a downer, but might be a way to really wake people up. And then another goal, working with and helping the HDC. So some of the things that, you know, Mickey and Angus brought up is, you know, they have their guidelines, and those are their guidelines, and they're responsible for keeping them up, but they don't have the bandwidth. They freely admit that they don't have the bandwidth. So can we help them? And how, you know, we haven't been invited to help them, we've asked, but maybe we just need to do some work and share it. And if they like it, then we can keep working on it. I don't know. But it seems like we need to identify the big goals and then the key results that will help us with those goals. So does anybody want to, you know, take a stab at suggesting some big goals that I can put as our high level goals? Maybe 3 or 4 high level goals. Holly.
So as the staff liaison for both commissions and as a town employee, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but I also do want to put in a caveat that we need to make sure that our goals, and I think it needs to be a triage, if you will. Maybe that's something what Dawn was referencing to. We need to realize what our realistic expectations are, especially the fact that we are still in a pandemic and we don't know what's going on. I'm not trying to be a pessimistic at all. As you know, I've been a cheerleader for preservation planning for a long time and was a big voice, if you will, of you know, recommending to the select board to get this commission ongoing. So I am definitely a cheerleader and very appreciative of the work that you all have done so far and what you want to achieve down the road. I just want to make sure that there's a caveat up here that's saying that we really don't know how the world is going to be in general. And if we're going to be meeting this way still, what the restraints are. I think that needs to play into the roles and the goal setting for the upcoming year. But I think this is a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Dawn?
Yeah, I think that the 2 top ones to me would be the getting the grant and doing some survey work for the town. And I don't know the wording to put around that yet. And then the second one is to have a what you have up there is how we integrate the report we did on preserving historic sidewalks, landscapes, etc., into the town's policies and procedures. So anytime they're doing that work, that becomes the guideline with which they operate. And those, to me, those are the two that if we can do those two, that would be significant from that standpoint. I think putting one to cooperate better with the HDC is what we're going to do anyway. And I don't know how to measure that. I'm not certain yet what the measures are for that. I think it's a nice action step. I'm not certain we've got a great measure yet.
Sorry, what was the last one, Don?
Working better with the HDC and cooperating with the HDC and having them collaborate with us. I just don't know the measure yet because we've not been able to figure that out. And I'm not certain that we aren't working on two different agendas, but providing them with information help them make better decisions.
Yes.
If I
Well,
may, I just wanted to add on that.
Yep, Holly.
That's where I really do think the CLG requirements are going to be helpful in that regard. You're going to require to have a joint meeting, as the hopefully coordinator for that, and as both commissions liaison, that's something that not only is the Commonwealth looking for that reporting, so it's going to be a necessity. We obviously know that both commissions are very happy on moving forward with having a CLG. I will tell you that town admin was wanting to make sure that we, that it's in staff's bandwidth to be able to handle this. Baby steps, I think that the CLG component is going to be very helpful to have that communication. And that's kind of why I wanted to start this conversation off with realistic expectations during a pandemic, because it is the bandwidth. It is looking at what's going on from a application standpoint with the HDC, how many different meetings are going on, and where plugging in an additional meeting for a mutual conversation between you all can fit in. So I think that will be helpful with the CLG requirement. So.
Okay, so I've added obviously get accepted to the CLG. We're assuming that our application will be accepted, but meet the CLG requirements and have a joint meeting at least annually. And
I'm sorry.
Yes, please just speak up if you want to say something, because I can't see everyone if you have your hand up. Yes, Georgia.
I've been struck since the last meeting by the comments about reaching people in the younger generation.
Yeah.
And so I've been wondering about whether we could set up some methods and activities that could reach them. And so I consulted the member of the young generation that I know is interested in preservation, which is my daughter, Julia. And she came up with a bunch of interesting ideas that never in a million years would have occurred to me.
Oh, okay.
And I'm thinking that's an interesting project that's totally outside my realm of experience, but it would be using a site like Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat to try to reach them and start stuff like a photo scavenger hunt with preservation as its focus. I mean, a way of using stuff like diagrams of houses with arrows pointing to different important parts, coloring books with pages of historic houses, tours for young people that are guided by other young people, and incorporating activities like crossword puzzles, word searches, all this stuff based on historic terms and elements of historic houses for people that might already be slightly interested but don't know enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we had an ambassador, I think if Julia lived on island, she would love to be one. But if we had an ambassador in that age demographic, who would find it fun to put this stuff together, maybe somebody at the NPT might have, or a board member might have a mini-me in that age group to help put together activities to attract younger people. That would be that would be a way of reaching them. Julia came up with a whole number of specific things that I could send along to you. A scavenger hunt would be, I think, a lot of fun.
So I think what we're talking about is adding a goal about broaden the appeal of preservation to different groups.
Right, in this case, especially younger groups, because I think that's
Youth.
important that it not be seen as a gray-haired activity entirely.
Yes.
Hillary,
And-
if I can speak to that, I have some thoughts about that too.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah, so, me and Hillary have talked about this quite a bit. Public opinion, public relation, I think that's something that, I'm really interested in. As far as, how do we promote historic homes? How do we promote a simpler lifestyle on Nantucket? I think, and I'm seeing this a lot in my own work, we have a lot of people coming here from New York and New Jersey who are used to the Hamptons and the lifestyle there. And I think we are starting to lose the traditional New England coastal architecture, lifestyle, kind of a slower way of enjoying a vacation. And I'm talking to a lot of people in my field, a lot of clients, just about trying to remember why they came to Nantucket. And maybe that's a simpler architecture, a simpler beach house, a simpler way of enjoying your time here. And it's a big, broad promotion, but it's something that I'm actively pursuing, and I hope that I can dovetail that into the work of your all commission as well.
Okay, I've written down slow Nantucket movement. The WPI folks, that's the Worcester Polytechnic Institute students. We have Nantucket has a long and very productive relationship with them. They did a presentation on Nantucket customs. Did anybody attend that? Dawn, did you attend that?
I did.
Oh, you did, great. So is there anything there that might be, should we all watch that or get a summary of it or something?
Yeah, the WPI did the report as well.
Oh,
But it
great.
was recorded.
Maybe we could circulate the report. Do you have it, Holly?
I can get access to it.
Yeah, I think
there
that
was,
would be
I was one of the
interesting.
staff members included. So, yep, I can.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of great things in there, but I mean, I don't think it takes a brain surgeon to say that, like, we all like to go sit at the beach in a chair and swim in the ocean. And I mean, I think there are just simple things that we are quickly forgetting about Nantucket that are so universal. And I think one of them is the quaint streetscapes, the beautiful antique homes. And, a lot of people come here with very expensive antique cars that they've spent a lot of money to restore. And I don't see an antique home being all that far off from that hobby, and trying to dovetail this antiquity, this sense of pride in an old form that you can show off and enjoy. It's very similar to antique cars, antique furniture. And I think that there's ways to promote this in a way that people can relate to it again. And I think regulation and I don't want to get political, but like making somebody do it is difficult, but promoting it and saying this is a fantastic thing is I think an easier way for people to, like you're saying, inspire them to do it rather than force them to do it. So that's something I'm trying to think about a lot. I haven't done anything other than talk about it, but it's something that I'm hoping that we can all kind of continue to talk about.
Thank you, Ben. So I think this is, a goal around, so are we talking about broadening the appeal of preservation to different groups, or are we just talking about maybe defining an awareness and conversation? I mean, I think we're talking about changing people's minds and maybe like shifting the zeitgeist a little bit.
I
Tapping.
think you might be talking about giving it social value.
Yes.
That's basically what you're talking about, so that it becomes part of the social value system in our community, and you promote it from that point of view. Sorry for jumping in.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Susan. And you everybody, you do have to kind of jump in because I can't see everyone because I'm screen sharing. The Nantucket culture. Whoops. Because if we set this, I just want to make sure we set the right goal.
Yeah, and I'm sorry,
Because
Hillary, maybe this isn't necessarily a goal, and I'm sorry if I'm sticking my thumb.
No, Ben, I actually think it's really the goal. I mean, I think your point about we have to inspire people, and Susan's point about the values, the social value. I mean, if your social value is like, I want a white box that I can show off, and you wouldn't even know, it could be anywhere, like it could be in Miami. I mean, that is not Nantucket, but that's kind of where people are going. That's what is valued. And I think the point of groups that have a narrow focus, I mean, we have a narrow focus. We are focused on identifying how we are culturally enriched by these historic, the history that's around us, the living history that's around us. That's what we're interested in. We want to identify it. We want to understand culturally how it enriches us, and we want to celebrate it. And that will inspire other people to say, wow, you know, the last thing I'm going to do is acquire this antique and make it not an antique anymore. The same way, you know, you're not going to acquire an antique car and like put a bunch of parts on it that are modern or replace all of the chrome with plastic. Like people just aren't going to do that. You wouldn't buy an antique car to replace the chrome with plastic, but people do that to their houses all the time. So I'm just trying to parse, what do people think? Is this really about broadening the appeal of preservation to different groups, or is it about finding a way to have a conversation to inspire a cross section of folks about preservation? What does anybody want to suggest? I mean, I said broaden the appeal of preservation to different groups as a big goal. Do we want to change this and say something different? Does anybody have ideas?
Hillary, if I may, want to notate our nonprofits in preservation and history that are our partners, that, you know, NPT, PIN, NHA. I think there would be some benefit of that public and private partnership, if you will,
Yeah.
Of promoting preservation. There's a lot of work that both those groups have already done for preservation. You know, I started at NPT as an intern at the high school, you know, at the high school. So I might be an odd duck, if you will, in that world, but you know, that's where that interest came from. And I think there is a level of appreciation with our younger folks. So
Holly,
NPT is kind of already started that.
And Holly, I'm sorry. We have to set a goal, and then we can decide how we're going to achieve that goal. And it may be that we work with other people. It may be that we coordinate nonprofits. But right now, I want to decide on the goal. And I'd love to hear. So an alternative goal that I want to say, if I can paraphrase what Ben is saying, is connect preservation to cultural values. Does anybody want to put anything else up on the whiteboard as a possible goal around this objective? David, I know you had sent me some ideas about working with realtors and working with youth.
Yeah, so, I think kind of Ben and I are kind of everyone's kind of looking to us to kind of, help spearhead this conversation. And I think that it's important that we do so. I think it's interesting. I was kind of thinking late last night and some thoughts to Hillary and kind of wanted to share those with you. So I'll just kind of read off what I was thinking last night. So, I mean, I really feel as kind of a young year-rounder on Nantucket that myself and Ben, who's also out here as well, are probably most strategically aligned to connect with the youth and engage with them. I think the important thing is to actually kind of inspire, and I think that's the best word, some of these folks into action. I'm not sure how best to do that. I think it's really hard to connect with the younger generation, to connect with people like myself or people that are younger than myself. I like Georgia's idea and her daughter's idea about like a Snapchat, or I've never used TikTok, but I've certainly heard about it, to engage these folks, though I don't know if creating a forum, like let's say a social media page or a content page or thread, is going to be as effective, because I don't know if these folks that might be interested in preservation are necessarily seeking us out. I think it'd be, I mean, where I would like to come in is kind of help seek these folks out ourselves. I recalling last meeting when Brian spoke about some of the tech MIT folks that were volunteering on different preservation commissions in the Cambridge area. I mean, I'd like to see kind of a resurgence of youth kind of step up to the plate here, and try and do what we can. I think this obviously runs in line with, all the things we're talking about with culture and broadening the appeal of preservation. And there are different stakeholders. I just think one of which is the youth. And I think the youth is, very important, because certainly we're going to have to pass the baton here at some point. And I always like to talk about, measurable, achievable goals. How do we know we're actually getting anywhere with the youth? So I just kind of outlined a couple of like hypotheticals to Hillary in my email that I wanted to share with you guys. And you can, I certainly want to have a fluid and open discussion about this, so feel free to chime in. I was thinking, that there are a lot of committees in town that, we've got a lot of, folks, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and not too many folks under 30 that are volunteering for the town. And I would like to see not only another member on this committee, but in other committees, preservation oriented or not, volunteering and getting involved in local government, because I think there, at some point, Nantucket's going to kind of change hands, if you will, and there's going to be a new younger generation that's kind of bringing us into the future. And we're aware of it, and I think that we're all smart enough to kind of, understand where we're at, and if we could all put our heads together, I think we could come up with some good, measurable goals to try and get the youth activated. I like the idea of the Black Homeowners Association. I don't see I don't see a lot of color in our representation in town, and I would like to see that change. And that's another cultural thing too. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I would like to kind of target the youth as being one myself. Ben, I hope you can tag along with me on that effort, and kind of want to get this discussion going, because I think this is very important. Thank you.
And if I could just mention something about what David just mentioned, the youth are great. I think that's a good demographic to talk about and to connect with. But in my experience that I'm seeing now, I'm seeing a lot of like late 30s, early 40s people who made way too much money and are coming here to spend it. And I think they don't know how to spend it, and that they're the ones who are paying the builders to do damage to our buildings, and the people writing the checks right now, I think, are the people I want to try to connect to try to get them to reconsider maybe what they're trying to do, to try to do something less, or if it's an old house, trying to respect the old house rather than work around the issues of an old house. So I think, David, if you're focused on the youth, I'm more focused on the current people coming to Nantucket and just wanted to chime in on that piece.
I'd like to chime in on one element of that. When I was at the Preservation Trust, one of the things that I thought was our most important project was the kitchen tour. And the house tours that are given by St. Paul's and by the Garden Club are done to raise money for scholarships for local kids, which is terrific. The kitchen tour was done to raise awareness about how you can live in a historic house without gutting it and making it a Martha Stewart fiction of a historic house. And we called it a kitchen tour so that it wouldn't look like a competition to a house tour. But the idea was you preserve the interior of a historic house, except for the kitchen, okay? If you don't want to live in a kitchen where you have a cooking facility on a iron sleeve that's comes out from the fireplace, that's fine. You modernize the kitchen. But you can live in a historic house that has an ancient oven in the fireplace, that has ancient paneling, that has ancient ceilings and ancient stairwells, and you can appreciate those. And the whole idea was to get people to look at the old houses, the interiors, as the gems that they are. And unfortunately, I don't see that as a goal of any of the historic organizations right now. And the Preservation Trust has dropped that program. It was a problem of funding. It was a problem of staffing those houses and all of the rest of those issues. But I'd like to see one of the preservation organizations step up and start getting people inside historic houses, so the people who are writing these checks don't do, I think Susie Locke said this a long time ago, they're gutting houses to create a Martha Stewart interior that's a replacement of the original interior. And somebody's got to show them the original interior is beautiful. They don't need to create a Martha Stewart fake.
Yeah, it's like the difference between what's real and what's a copy. So
if I could,
seeing that,
oh.
there's no way to see that unless you bring people into the houses.
Before we get into too many tactics, and I know we have partners who are going to do a lot of this, I want to take a quick poll of the group. I'm hearing more for connect cultural history to current values and aspirations. So that I'd put that out there as one goal, and another goal to be broaden the appeal of preservation to different groups. Which one, I want to go around and hear from everybody about all the commissioners and then guests, which one resonates more as an appropriate goal for this topic. I'll start with Georgia since I see you on my screen.
I guess I am broadening the appeal of preservation to different groups, because I think that encompasses getting the people who are writing the checks to understand why preservation is important.
Okay, Ben, or certainly feel free to say neither of these and suggest a different goal. Ben?
Yeah, I think when I read the word preservation, I feel like it's preserving a time period that doesn't then help you live a modern life. So I think that's can alienate people from realizing that they can buy an antique home and not live in a museum. So for that reason, I like the connect cultural history to current values and aspirations. I feel like that resonates with me better and is more approachable to people who might otherwise be scared of the word preservation.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
I'm kind of with Georgia on this. I'll give you.
Oh, Tom, could you be sure to mute your video if you're talking on the phone, because we're getting feedback.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that better?
Better, thanks.
You're good now.
One of the things, what we're talking about here, I'll give you two quick examples, was Kilbert's house at 105 Main Street. They absolutely gutted that house. It was a perfect example of what we're talking about here. And it had ancient kitchens and da-da-da-da-da. The outside kind of looks like it used to, but it's just a shell. The other side of it is the people that just bought the Richard Gardner house at on Westchester Street. They're doing a lot of work there, but all they're doing is modernizing the kitchen. And they're very much into preservation. And so I haven't met them yet, but I'm going to. And it just shows us both of those houses are very similar in that they're old houses, very old houses. The one on Westchester Street was built in 1723. And the Kilburn house at 105 was moved from Sherwood. So they're, I'm for, I think, preserving what we've got. And I don't mind people modernizing a small part of it, like the kitchen, but I'm very much, as if you're reading the paper lately, opposed to doing much damage to an original building. You have to, I'm for leaving it exactly like it was.
So Tom, I think you're bringing up an important point, which is save more houses, save more historic houses.
Right.
And, you know, does that need to be its own goal?
I don't know if it was Ben or David that mentioned it. The business of these new people that are coming in, these younger people with a lot of money that are used to what's going on in the Hamptons, and they don't understand what we're trying to accomplish here in Nantucket. And they're the ones that are really, many of them, not all of them, but there are a lot of those types they're really trying to change Nantucket to what they think it should be than what we think it should be.
So can you, I put down save more historic houses because obviously that's what we're about, but, or, I mean, I don't know, some people might argue, they might say you're not about saving houses, you're about providing information so that people can make informed decisions. But anyway, I've written it down. But could you cast a vote, Tom, for the one or two here that I have up on the screen?
Okay. I'm for number one.
Okay. I'm now going to ask David.
Yeah. I think I'm probably leaning towards number one as well.
Okay. Georgia already voted. Don?
Yeah, both are important. I lean more towards what Ben said, is that connecting the cultural history to current values and aspirations so it's in perspective. We're not dictating that you preserve, but we want to put in perspective why you should. So I'm more in number two.
Okay. Susan?
Let's just see here. I am probably more for number two. I think the word, if this is something that we, excuse me. If this is something that we're using that other people are going to be looking at, I just think the word preservation has like a gut reaction from people right away. They've heard it so much. And I think this kind of turns it a little bit and makes it a little more approachable.
Okay. Mickey?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm talking about number one or number two, but I think that is, I think Ben mentioned that, we need to really, the people that are doing the most damage at the moment are the people, as he said, writing the checks. And there is a demographic there of people that are coming and buying houses in town and making big changes to them. And I think we need to make it more desirable to own an antique home. And I think to some degree, that's kind of a marketing thing. And maybe we can somehow use social media or convince the chamber to make antique homes as one of the, what Nantucket is known for. We're known for great restaurants and shops in the downtown, but let's try to add antique homes to that list and get that on the list of really desirable things that people come to Nantucket to do and see. So I kind of think that's a number one, but I may be wrong there.
Yeah, Hillary, these two things are so close. I mean, Dawn's having a hard time, Mickey's having a hard time really coming up with an answer here because they're very, very related.
Yeah, so what I see is the fundamental difference in terms of what we would actually do, depending on if we adopted goal 1 or goal 2. If we wanted to broaden the appeal of preservation to different groups, we would be, very specifically reaching out to different groups. Like, so the different groups is the part of this, whereas connect cultural history to current values and aspirations, we're more focused on the conversation and hoping that by having the right conversation and launching the right conversation, different groups would be attracted to it. So we would not be measuring ourselves based on the diversity of the people who came to our meetings or, started talking about preservation or joined NPT or whatever. We would be evaluating ourselves based on, conversations that we inspired, maybe pieces of work that we produced that connected and celebrated our cultural history. So I guess they kind of hinted, I don't know, maybe they're the wrong goals. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking of things, but I think it's a subtle difference, but the goal that you would set, the objectives that you would set are different.
Hillary?
Yes, Georgia.
One of the issues of broadening the appeal of preservation to different groups, we haven't discussed realtors. And they're critical in the issue of how do you reach those people with all the money and the checks
Yes.
who are talking about making us into the Hamptons. They're a
Yes.
group along with youth, right? And I think it's important for us to think about working with them. That was one of the groups in our chart.
Yes, and it was also something that David volunteered and said that he, really wanted to do.
That's a critical group, so that they don't feel that they should that they have to undersell an historic house. And the second point I'd like to make is that your point way up here is that historic houses are often affordable houses. The affordable housing issue right now is huge among year-round people. It's just huge. So to the extent there are historic houses that can be affordable and yet not gutted in order to be lived in every day, that's a big point that we could try to make. I mean, fix the kitchen in those houses and then they're still affordable. And I would really love to reach out to somebody like Brooke Moore or the people who are really active in affordable housing. Who am I thinking of? Holland.
Tucker Holland.
Yeah.
So if
Sandy Holland's son, and Sandy Holland was a member of the Preservation Trust Board for years. So these are people who already have connections in preservation and have deep connections in affordable housing in the town. So we ought to make those connections ourselves somehow or other by inviting them to meetings, to asking for their input, or somewhere or other, making a connection between affordability, historic houses, and preservation.
So on that point that Georgia makes, if I may, Donovan Ripkema, who is an economist as well as he's in preservation. He has
what's the name, Holly,
what name is name? Donovan Ripkema. You can look him up. His company is called Place Economics, and he is really big on finding that line between historic preservation and economics, as well as cultural and historic identity. And he's somebody that we had on Nantucket for the Keeping History Above Water conference. If you were able to go to day 2 that we had last year, or actually the year before, it was day 2 at the Nantucket Yacht Club. And I brought he's written all sorts of different things, and I've given that actually to Tucker. And this past week, Tucker and the Housing Trust started their kickoff for the update to the housing protection plan, excuse me, housing production plan for the island. And I really do think that ties in with sustainability. And on a side note too, you know, I know we have Dawn, our chair of the select board here, and we're so grateful for that. That the town's, the select board has a strategic plan, and they have a definition of sustainability. And within that definition of sustainability is historic preservation. So
Yes.
I just want, you know, this commission to realize that, you know, our powers that be for the town do understand the importance of preservation, and having it within that definition is very supportive of other initiatives for the town.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tie-ins with preservation and sustainability. I'm hoping that with this update to the housing production plan, that they look more into sustainability and utilizing our historic resources. You know, we have a little bit of a bylaw that requires people, when they go through the move on, move off of a structure with the HDC, then there's a separate bylaw that, you know, they have to have it advertised for a certain amount of days, yada, yada. How that can kind of be pushed a little bit further, and having it so these structures that have to be moved, that are okay from the HDC standpoint, to be actually utilized for our housing issues. And it's nice to see, to be honest with you, it's nice to see these structures being utilized, even if they're not necessarily contributing to the NHL, but, you know, we're looking at it from a sustainability standpoint. It's a full circle. So sorry, I digress.
Holly, thank you. It's a very good point, and I see that Dawn put her hand up.
I just wanted to add something that you guys might want to get more information out about and help promote. Is I have a client that recently bought in a house that was built pre-1950, and he's utilizing the historic tax credits.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up.
That house. And I think that people have gotten the idea that that's a really complicated endeavor and maybe not worth it, but it seems that it is worth it, and could be utilized by a lot more people. And that's when you come into, I mean, a lot of the time when historic houses come up for sale, I mean, obviously the land is very valuable because of most of them are in town when they're truly historic. For the most part, but the houses sometimes are in pretty major disrepair if they're in a more affordable price point. But this tax credit could be the vehicle for someone who's more of a year-round resident to be able to get into a house like that and fix it to a preserved standard that's now not in disrepair. So I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah. And that's something, it's actually on our work plan, is to run some workshops about historic tax credits. And I did talk with Christy about that when she was at the chamber, because it's only for income producing properties. So it's only relevant if you're using your house as a rental or if it's a business. But she was really excited to host something like that. So thank you for bringing it up. And it's nice to hear that your client found it not that complicated.
Oh, yeah.
I do want to go on and just get
document. I wasn't even looking at that.
I want to go to the commissioners who haven't had a chance to talk about this. And then I'm just conscious of the time and wanting to wrap up the discussion on goals for now. Would anybody who hasn't spoken among the commission, I don't think we've heard from Angus because Angus had to step away, about this sort of parsing, this broaden the appeal of preservation, different groups versus connect cultural history to current values and aspirations. Anyone? Any guests want to talk about our goals?
Hillary, I'll speak to it.
Okay, Angus.
I think while I was away, I was missing the nuances between option 1 and 2, but I see preservation at the core of connecting cultural history, values, and aspiration. And I think that, I think it was Ben who mentioned it, that the word preservation I think scares everyone who's a realtor or a developer. And there are all these ideas about limitation. And I think really at the core of this is an appreciation for the resources that we have. And without people knowing what it is and why it's valuable, I think we're going to be going in circles. And so I think it really is about raising awareness to as many groups as possible. But we can, I think everyone related to building, but I think the builders are taking the orders from the owners and the realtors. And so I think, as far as groups, the whole real estate market, I think, needs to be approached in a way that is engaging for them. And I think David and Don and anyone else involved in real estate could to respond to that better. But Nantucket has such a enticement about it. It's incredibly trending, and I think along the way we sort of lost sight of why, and now it's sort of trending on its trendiness, and we're kind of losing the core of what began it. And I'd like to see preservation and appreciation of what we have as a resource become sexy and trending in itself.
Yeah. Okay. So you're voting for 2. Is that right?
I feel like they're kind of both in the same group. I mean, I think we ought to bring preservation to different groups. But that's, I think you do that by bringing the cultural history to the current values.
Okay.
I think we ought to have a course that if anybody buys a house, they have to go through a preservation course before they can buy it. That's
Manual.
I'm sure the realtors would love that, but
Yeah. Well, so I think we've had a great discussion about how to motivate more preservation. I want to just review some of the things I have on the sheet, that we will further the updates and expansion of the surveys. We will improve the town's policies and procedures regarding historic preservation of the public realm. And that's basically what we have in our site, is this implementing the streetscape policies that we proposed. The NHC and the ACC support and help each other. Broaden the appeal of preservation to different groups / connect cultural history with current values and aspirations. And I think we're pretty split, so maybe we actually need to combine those, because I think I think what I'm hearing is that nobody wants to let go of the importance of getting different groups in there. So maybe it's a combined goal. So we talked about saving more historic houses is actually, being the North Star. We talked about the link of preservation, sustainability, and affordability, and then some tools, historic tax credits. We talked about a lot of tactical stuff. We also have our preservation exhibit, and we have Esther Lee here so that we can talk about that as one potential way to connect cultural history to current values, educate and excite the public about the history of preservation specific to Nantucket. Before we get to that, I want to take care of some business that we have to take care of, because I do want to end on time. So first of all, as far as these goals, I'm going to work on these goals. We're meeting again in 2 weeks. And I might reach out to a couple people who might like to work on this with me, just to kind of be a sounding board to help develop the ideas. And I will bring these goals back to the group, and maybe we'll be in a position to vote on them, or at least massage them a little bit more and vote on them very shortly. Does that sound okay to everybody? Does anybody want to, okay, if you could just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Angus is a thumbs up. Dawn, I can't see you now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stop sharing this and then I'll be able to see everybody. Okay, Don,
Yes,
sounds good. Okay, Mickey.
Yes.
Okay, Georgia. All right, Susan. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, Angus. Ben.
Sounds good.
Okay, Tom.
Yes.
Okay, David.
Do it.
Great. Okay. So just a couple of
Hillary,
things. Yes. Who is that?
sorry, real quickly that's Holly. On the
Yeah.
subject of historic tax credits, I do want to mention that I think there's room for a collaborative advocacy between MPT and this group because they also feel that that's a strong tool. I will note that their historic tax credit applications are required to get town, recommendations, and
Yes.
I have signed off on one for 33 Milk Street, if you're all familiar with that structure on the corner of
Yeah.
Milk and Quaker. That's a structure that obviously it has been retained in a family for over 100 years. Long story short, those property owners are utilizing the historic tax credit and have actually spoken to me. I actually got to go to the site and take a look at it and see what they've done. And they're going into their second round. But I just want to make the note that they have expressed their excitement with the historic tax credit and are willing to get it, kind of talk about it to people. So I just want to put that on the back burner that they would be willing to help promote it, which is a good thing. And as far as
Okay.
I understand, it's historic tax credit on Nantucket have been few and far between, just because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts utilizes it as a, like what you said, more of a an economic aspect for people that
Okay.
utilize that.
All right. So
that way.
we'll get into historic tax credits and reach out to NPT and be sure that we do something about that this year. I agree. Just want to take care of a little bit of business. So the sidewalks and historic streets. So we've created our finished document. I've circulated it to the select board. I haven't circulated it broadly to all of the stakeholders we identified, so I will do that. But I have had a discussion with Dawn. Dawn, I don't know if you were able to talk with Libby about that.
We haven't yet.
So I requested of Dawn that, we should bring this in front of the select board. She's going to meet with Libby and get back to us. But I did have another thought, which is, it seems like since these are guidelines, we really should ask the HDC to look at this and vote to formally accept it. And I wondered what Holly thought about that.
And that's on the pavement project report. Yes, I mean, I think that would make sense to have them on board. So however, I think, yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't be something that you'd want to work with them on. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so could you, Holly, distribute our report to them and say we would like them to look at it and vote to accept it? Okay, thank you. The Section 106 review is not something that we've started yet. ATM articles, I don't think we're going to have a chance to really talk about this in depth, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to touch on it briefly. I'm just trying to find the packet. Where is the packet?
Hillary, if I may, just on the Section 106, I have received a letter from MHC regarding the review on the Memorial Airport's master plan. I just received it literally this past week, so I will email that to the commission so you have that. It looks like you may have been CC'd on this as well. Again, I've mentioned before that the MHC hasn't necessarily had the right folks or addresses with their correspondence. So I will send that out to the commission so you have it.
Okay, thank you. We will look for that. I'm just going to get the packet up here. I have to share my screen again. Okay. Sure. So annual town meeting, there's the new updated timeline for this. Here it is. It's going to be on June 5th. Mark your calendar. And I have put just the timeline for what's happening when in our packet. And if you might all want to acquaint yourself with it. We have asked the select board to suggest a change to the road limitation on road construction to protect pavement. And so that will be something they will be considering and we can advocate for. I've also included a schedule prepared by town council of all of these different bylaws. You know, we're a new commission, so we don't have any tradition of commenting on these or not. And I wanted to find out from the commissioners, you know, if we might want to identify articles that we feel are of preservation concern. And figure out, you know, who to make a comment to so that they can just be aware that we consider it a preservation planning concern. So I don't think we really have time to talk about this now, but I would like you all to think about it, go through this list. You know, a lot of these articles are zoning map changes where people are asking, like this is, here's an example of someone who is in LUG 2, which is a low intensity zone, and they want to go to a much higher intensity zone and subdivide their property. You know, I don't know if we want to comment on these things. Prohibiting roundabouts near schools. We did a lot of work on roundabouts, and I don't think we had a feeling that roundabouts are impossible to have working near schools. We would like to see the town use these smaller roundabouts. And that, you know, wasn't really taken up with any full-throated support, but we didn't really get a chance to air our report because the roundabout that we were reviewing was pulled. So, you know, we could make a comment on that. So any comments about this? I do think we should have more of a discussion at a future meeting because we're running out of time, but I do want to hear if anybody has a strong feeling one way or another. And Dawn, also from you, how we can be helpful to contribute to the conversation around helping the voters. These are all things that are going to be voted on at town meeting. So helping the voters understand, put these things into context for our mission. Any comment from anyone?
Hillary, I think there are potentially very large issues, but I honestly don't know if they're beyond our purview. I mean, I assume that, I'm guessing here, but I'm assuming that somebody who lives in a low intensity zoning area and wants to make it high intensity has the purpose of wanting to subdivide their property and build a secondary dwelling. And then we're getting into whole issues that are maybe beyond our purview. How does that affect the built environment? Is it a good idea or not? I mean, that's not really what we're about in some ways. And so it is in a very large sense, but I think it, you know, is it something we really want to start discussing?
I think that's a fair point.
I mean, it also gets into the issue of affordable housing. I mean, they're very, very large global issues on Nantucket.
Yeah. Yep. Dawn, do you have a hand up? Yeah.
I mean, it's really not common practice for committees other than the Finance Committee and the Planning Board, who both have extensive public hearings on these, to take committee-wide positions on articles. I think that anyone can participate in those reviews as a citizen, but there's not another board that comments, except occasionally the select board will add an additional comment to the finance committee's recommendation.
And the planning commission also might add a comment.
Occasionally, yes.
Yeah. Right. You know, I think the historical commission is an unusual commission because, well, first of all, we are a commission, not a committee, and we are the Preservation Planning Commission. So we are looking for how activities on the island affect our National Historic Landmark, and so that's why I brought it up, because I think it's worth having a discussion about. And I think some of these actions really do affect preservation quite directly. Others have nothing to do with preservation or preservation planning. But I just wanted to have the conversation.
Yeah, I think, Hillary, we have to be careful that we don't, as Georgia said, go beyond our purview and lose influence in the areas that we want to be in our purview, because it creates other issues when we get reactions to it. So I think we need to be choiceful about how we spend our effort and time and what are the most critical ones.
Yes, there's also the issue of time, because it takes a lot of resources to inform these, to review these in a well-informed way. And speaking of time, so I'd like to continue this discussion, if that's okay. If everyone could just think about this, think about how what you think is the correct approach. Please look at the citizens warrants. And we did, by the way, make a comment. We wrote a letter for the 2020 annual town meeting about swimming pools, which we sent to the select board in support of the planning commission article. So we have done that. We didn't get any negative feedback. I don't know if it made any difference at all. But part of the reason why we did that was Andrew suggested that we might want to do that. He asked us to. And there was some difference of opinion where the planning board suggested it and the FinCom didn't recommend it. So it seems to be helpful to have somebody else support it if they felt they wanted to support it. So let's continue this discussion. And I want to turn to the discussion of the idea of having a preservation planning exhibit, supporting this exhibit, which would be an effort from Esther Lee, but it would only work if we could get a group of people together to support it. And she's wrote a wonderful plan, which took a ton of time. I did help her with the plan and was happy to do it. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I think you all have it in front of you. You can look at it individually. Esther Lee, are you there? Can you hear me? Esther Lee? Hello? Well, I imagine we'll probably have Esther Lee back shortly, but so I'll give a bit of an introduction. Actually, you know what, I might call her. Hold on just one second.
Hillary, I'm here. I just
okay, good. Thank you. I know you've been waiting patiently while we dealt with our other business. Can you turn your camera on, Esther?
Where is the camera?
If you go to the bottom left corner of the screen, you see video, and you can start or stop your video. There you are. Hi.
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 Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. So tell us about your idea.
Well, first of all, I just want to say who I am, because my idea has a context. I have been coming to Nantucket since I was 3, and I'm now in my 80s. So I've been here for a number of years and seen multiple changes, some of which I love and some of which I abhor. I was a member of the Nantucket Preservation Trust for a number of years on the board, and I am the proud owner of a wonderful house that, with the help of Mickey Rowland and Sandy Kendall, over 3 years, we restored. And Georgia, when you say antique houses are not expensive, I will disagree with you, hon. Both the building and the maintenance. So in terms of preservation, during my time on the board of NPT, I was pretty loudmouth about gutting and the importance of preservation and the economic value of preservation. So I think I probably share the values of this committee. In terms of the project plan, which many of you may not have seen that format, I was the chief of staff of the medical director of Medicaid for about 5 years, and we developed project planning and used it throughout the entire agency. So I know that the concept of how you do a project, the process of how you do a project works very successfully if you have things down on paper. So I just wanted to get those things clear, that I'm not coming at this from a novice point of view. Now, what I would like to do is ask people about their questions. You've had an opportunity, I hope, to read the plan. And I think the most important thing would be for you to tell me what your questions are, what your concerns are, if you think it would work. Oh, the other thing, I've done one other exhibit, and if people are not familiar with the concept of the way I'm talking about presenting this, I can send to Hillary the exhibit I did at the for the NHA a couple of years ago. Okay, so can we get back then to, please tell me what you think. Do you think it will work? What your criticisms are, what your suggestions are, and are you willing to participate?
I have one comment I'd like to make before we hear from everybody else. Firstly, Estelle, I want to thank you for your passion for this project. It was your idea, and this amazing, very thorough review. You did like your own little graduate seminar on the history of preservation and wrote this wonderful paper, and all the plan is very thorough. So thank you. I also want to just share, when we all think about this idea of this exhibit, that one of the great appeals of this exhibit, and the reason why I was certainly excited about it when Estelle suggested it, is because it's an opportunity for the different preservation groups on the island to work together. And I wanted to make sure that everyone noticed in the goals for the project that it's not just to present an exhibit on the history of the preservation movement on Nantucket, but also to create something that all the different groups, the NPT, the Sconset Trust, the Preservation Institute Nantucket, the NHA, could, and also the municipal agencies, the HCC and the NHC, could all come together around a feel-good educational endeavor. And that would actually be really good for community building and productivity and getting to know each other and working together. So I just wanted to highlight that.
And I also, that we try to engage Nantucket residents, both the summer residents and the full-time residents, and those organizations that may not be in our visibility right now, to get as many people, ordinary in quotes, people involved in the concept of preservation, make it a more community value. That preservation is what brings in a lot of money. It's what makes us proud. It's what makes us want to live here, and it's an extremely important process.
Estelle, this is Marty. How are you?
Hi, Marty. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I just wanted to echo, Hillary's thank yous to you for pulling this together. I think it's a great proposal. I have lots of thoughts. I won't share them all now. I have another meeting I'm running to, but I did want to offer, I'm happy to be a part of whatever committee, whatever it is that group that's working on this. I've done a lot of work over the last 10 years to really research Walter Beinecke Jr.
Yes.
I have about 40 interviews. I've gone through his archive and organized it at Yale. So I have a lot of thoughts on at least Beinecke's role in the preservation of Nantucket, and happy to share, that research. I will say, I think we need to, the only other thing I would urge us to be is brutally honest. Beinecke, certainly the island would be a very different place had he not had his, that social entrepreneurship, development through preservation. But yet there were a lot of buildings that he took down,
Yes.
I think we have to be very honest about, I don't even say that he helped preserve Nantucket. I said he helped create the modern version of Nantucket that we know, right?
And he also brought up the concept of the economic value, I think, of preservation. Let me say that one of the reasons, I think when I talked to Hillary, that I wanted to include Beinecke was I know the NHA is very invested in Beinecke's history, and I really would hope that the NHA would cooperate with us. So my idea of including it the way I did was to get their attention.
Well, I appreciate
I agree
that.
with you. I agree
And
with you.
again, I'm happy to contribute in terms of the research that the Preservation Institute Nantucket, I myself have done with Beinecke. Happy to share. We have a lot of good visuals and a lot of good stories.
I think that's wonderful. And if we are able to do this, I would really value your participation and love to work with you on this. Thank you.
Love to work with you too. Thank you, Estelle.
I want to add, Georgia.
I want to add one Beinecke anecdote. I mean, early on in the Preservation Trust's history, like it might have been our first year, we gave Walter Beinecke an award. And I was so impressed by this man. This was out at the Sconset Chapel, because here's a guy in his 80s who's received every award under creation for preservation. He didn't have to say anything but stand up there and wave his hand, and everybody would have applauded him and he could have gone home. Instead, he stood up and he gave a talk about preservation on Nantucket. But one of the things that he said that struck me, that has always stuck with me, despite the fact that he did occasionally take down houses, was he said he remembered when he was first working on Nantucket. He walked uptown from the ferry stations at one point, and he was first accosted by somebody who said to him, "Mr. Beinecke, you're running too many ferries. These people get off the ferries, they're tourists, they throw the garbage in my front yard. We have entirely too many tourists as a result of all this stuff, your activity you're doing. Too many people are coming here and they're ruining our environment." And he said he walked a little bit further up Main Street and he encountered somebody who said, "Mr. Beinecke, we need more ferries. We're not getting enough people here. There's not enough to get traffic to keep my business going. What are you going to do to bring us more ferries?" And he saw one of his roles as balancing the economic interests of both the business people and the people who lived here year round. And I thought that was a very wise comment on his part. It was a very wise thing for us all to remember going forward. There are always two sets of values involved in preservation and involved in keeping Nantucket, Nantucket.
Yes.
And I appreciated his saying that. You must remember that, Estelle.
I don't think I was there that early, Georgia, but that is a very important comment, the balance between economic development and preservation. And because sometimes they conflict and sometimes they support each other, and having people understand the relationship between economic development and preservation, and having them improve what is problematic and continue what is helpful, I think is a really important goal for the exhibit. But it will take a huge amount of work. I know the one that I did last summer, I worked on for almost 2 years, and it was a quarter of the size of this. So it is an enormous amount of work.
When I did the exhibition for the 40th anniversary of Penn, which I can share with you, and that was at the beginning of my Beinecke research, but I called it continuity and change because what I learned about the program and looking back is that as much as things had changed, there were certain core values that you were talking to, principles. And I think that was the success of why the PEN program has been successful. And I think that's why Preservation on Nantucket has survived.
I'd love to hear from other people.
Yeah, any questions, Rita?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to jump in and say, I know MPT would definitely be very interested in supporting this and being a part of it. I've worked for MPT for just about a year now, but prior to that, my professional background is all in museums, and I have my master's in history museum studies.
That's wonderful to know.
Yeah, so we'd love to be involved, and Mary also has a museum background, and we have resources from the exhibit that was done in 2019 at Hadman House, which was more about the history of the different architectural styles on Nantucket, but we have resources from that and a lot that we'd be happy to contribute. And I think this exhibit could also be an interesting opportunity to talk not only about organizations and private organizations and public boards and commissions and their role in preservation, but also to highlight different individual stories of preservation and just people who cared about a building or who cared about Nantucket and took individual actions to help preserve the island. And I think there's a lot of those stories throughout Nantucket's history that we could tap into.
I absolutely agree. I wondered what people thought about partnering the exhibit with 1, 2, 3 seminars or community discussions in order to really get everybody involved and talking to one another. I wondered whether you thought that would be too much to do alongside the exhibit or whether it made sense. It certainly made sense to Beinecke and, I've forgotten the other man's name who was the Habs person, but that they did that in the summits to educate the community about what they were doing with the economic development in the presentation. And that's where I got the idea.
Tom? Oh, we can't hear you. It looks like the phone is muted. Holly, can you unmute Tom's phone?
Yeah, I just tried. I asked to unmute. See, what about the one that's on your screen?
I'm going to try that. Can you hear me now?
Okay, great. Oh, great.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I think one of the most important things that anybody has said here today is what David had said. I think this speaks to the word preservation scares the real estate brokers and the developers.
Yes.
Because they fear it means rules, regulations, and limitations. And I think what this board was talking about at our last meeting and educating the public, and that means preservationists as well as real estate brokers, developers, carpenters, whoever it is, I think is a very important piece of this. And if there's something like that in one of these, I forget the word you used in the thing I read about
the panels
you're going to use. I think trying to educate the real estate people and the developers to understand that preservation is not necessarily trying to decrease their bottom line. What we're interested in is preserving Nantucket, and it's all related.
I absolutely agree with you.
Something like that in this wherever it winds up being that addresses that. Ben was talking about this too. I mean, it's all education. I think is the most important part of this whole thing.
Well, in my 16 years at MPT, we constantly worked on that, and it is a important, very, very important goal. And any suggestions about how we do it, the language that we use, the kind of stories, the pictures, what will help us explain that preservation is not just, preservation is not regulation. It is a value system. It is an economic advantage. Those are the things that we want to stress. Will it be enough to stress the positive, or do we need to speak to the kinds of belief systems that the real estate brokers and the development people have? And I think maybe a little bit of both, but that's what I want to hear. And that's why I need a whole team to work with me on this.
I wanted to share something that Betsy Tyler emailed me. She had to drop off because her internet was very unstable. But she took a bit of a devil's advocate role. She said, you know, people today don't want to stand in front of panels and read panels. Younger people don't want to read panels. They want multimedia information. And Betsy said, you know, I'm just not sure that a museum exhibit is going to really be effective at reaching and inspiring and educating people, or really what we're talking about is storytelling, right? So she felt that maybe, you know, a museum exhibit of the type that we're talking about with panels and history up on the walls was going to be effective. And she suggested something like a publication, or she mentioned multimedia, a website. And my reaction was, that's true, but we also need some kind of an event to get people to talk about it. It needs to be time limited. So we are talking about 2022 here. So hopefully we will be out of COVID. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. This is not for this year. But I wanted to hear folks' reactions, and you know, if we want to do this, to work together, to collaborate, to educate about the history and the impact of the preservation movement on Nantucket, should we be thinking about different forms? Yes, Angus.
Hillary?
I'm sorry, could we hear from Angus, Georgia? I just wanted, and then we'll hear from you, okay?
I think Betsy has a really great point, and thanks for bringing it to the conversation. You know, the whole idea of reading boards in a museum setting, you know, makes it feel outdated for today. But that's not to say that people don't, you know, come in throngs to museums and look at exhibits and read boards. So I don't want to negate the proposed exhibit. But I think that multimedia would make it much more interesting and accessible. Films, interviews, house tours, or tours not specifically focused on any one thing, but I think some sort of visual exhibition would be helpful, where we could impart information while people are getting visuals on the important things that we're talking about.
Are you talking about experiences?
Streetscape, houses specifically. Sorry.
Are you talking about experiences? House tours, or are you talking about movies and video?
Maybe some sort of film that people could sit for 15 minutes or whatever, and you're aware of the architecture and the streetscapes and the people and the culture while learning about the preservation. I don't know. I'm just the comment from Betsy just made me think about trying to think about other ways to approach it other than reading a board in a room.
Georgia? Sorry, Esther, did you want to respond to that? Or can
I would, that I have no experience with that and have no idea how to do it, but I would love to be educated about how we would do it at a cost that we could afford.
Yeah. Okay.
And making a film is a very expensive proposal.
Yep. Yep. Okay, Georgia.
Just one more comment. The woman who is who I hope, if we do this, would do the graphics for this and do the panels, husband is a documentarian. So we could have that, but that is, I know from talking to him and his being a friend, he's a National Geographic photographer and documentarian. It is a very expensive process.
Yeah. Well, we have amazingly talented artists on Nantucket, people in theater, people in film. And maybe, you know, we're going to want to form a steering committee for this effort with representatives from our commission and other commissions. And we're certainly probably only going to be one voice, but we could ask, you know, whatever steering committee gets put together, that they consider, you know, how do you make this jump off the page? And if we have Rita, who's an expert in museum exhibits, I'm sure this was covered a lot in your master's because it's a real issue with museums.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from Georgia because she's been waiting to speak.
I'm sorry.
I also wanted to add that the NCTV has very good videographers, and they are varying levels of experience, but they're available. And I think this is a matter of public interest on Nantucket. So it's something they would certainly want to cover and may be available to make videos for the purpose of the exhibit. I agree that it would be a little flat to simply have boards to look at. I was thinking of three-dimensional elements of the exhibit on the order of what Penn Austin did. I mean, if we could show sort of bad bricks and good bricks, I mean, bad lime and good lime, something that's three-dimensional, somebody standing there, I mean, a three-dimensional figurehead from a boat. I'm boring at this stuff. I can't imagine this stuff, but I'm sure Rita, with her background, can think of it, and people better than I can think of making it jump off the stage rather than be boring. And I like the idea of multimedia. I like the idea of a website. And I like the idea of incorporating some of the things that my daughter was thinking of a youth tour. I mean, a tour oriented towards young people with a historic house scavenger hunt built into it. I mean, as you're taking a tour around the island around Nantucket, led by somebody in their 20s, take pictures of historic houses and find something that you can point out. Where is there a chimney that's in the middle of the house? Where's there an 8/8 window? I mean, whatever you have to look at, if you're somebody in your young teen or your older teens or young 20s, something you can pick out. And if you get all of them, you get some kind of a, I don't know, award, lunch at Black Eyed Susan, something like that.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I really like that idea, Georgia. And I kind of had a separate idea, kind of thinking about, you know, something that's hands-on or three-dimensional, if you will. And Rita, feel free to chime in on this too, since it sounds like your background kind of aligns with this. But I really think that it'd be cool if we kind of took our standards of treatments for historic pavement and kind of applied that to an exhibit in some sort of like walking tour of the downtown area. And you kind of give them the rundown of kind of what the different standards of treatments are, what you can expect, and then kind of show them real life in time examples of saying, okay, you know, take a look at this, you know, sidewalk here that's got this tree growing through it. And this is how we should treat these bricks here. And it's different how we treat these bricks over here on the other side of the street. I think that would be really cool and quite educational.
Thank you. I see Susan has her hand up.
I would also like to see that this be even if it just ends up being panels, that this could be installed in multiple locations, such as a few at the airport, a few at the steamship. You might even have, you know, a board down by the hub somewhere, or different locations where you could make it relevant to whatever it is that people are experiencing at that moment, especially for the steamship as they come into the harbor. You know, what are they seeing? What kind of historic landscape are they looking at as they arrive? That type of thing. That's it.
But what you're saying is you think that is more relevant than the history of preservation.
No, that's what I'm saying.
You're talking about, you know, something that is huge, because to just do the history of preservation and the history of each organization's participation in preservation, you're talking about 15 or 20 panels. That's the problem.
It might be more panels, correct, but it might be worth it to then pull the people in.
You mean as a marketing tool?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be a leaflet or something. Dawn? Oh, you're muted, Dawn. You're muted.
Okay. If we
Okay,
do have
thanks.
videos or short videos, should we partner with Dreamland that they put a short video on preservation before every show? And we educate, because there are a lot of people who are in town are not, they go to the movies frequently. Can we put the video on, we mentioned at the airport or steamship, can we put a video on the steamship authority that they play it as you're coming over?
Oh, that's a good idea to have
Things
a-
that just
yeah,
get people to continue to educate them. If we're going to make them anyway for the exhibit, can we use them in different ways with different venues in the town?
that's a good idea to see if we can get a video made that that is relevant. That will need a great committee who's used to doing this, to create a video and to then get it made, and some decent funding. That's a very good idea.
Esteli, what I'm hearing from folks is that, we might want to be thinking about Preservation Month 2022, May, as having a whole bunch of events, and the exhibit, tours, and that all the different groups really get together, all the different groups that are about history on Nantucket, get together and figure out what they're going to do and actually make Preservation Month really something.
Yes, that's an option too. But the idea of having videos both serve as an education tool and a marketing tool for both preservation and the exhibit is a really good one.
Yeah. So I think we really need the NHA on board. I think they're a make or break partner, frankly. I mean, they have the resources, the archive. Does anybody else agree?
Agree.
And NPT and Sconset Trust.
Well, yes, and we've heard NPT and PIN give full sort of endorsement and wanting to help. So I think we need to go to NHA and say, we're going to do this. We're at our time. So I guess, does anybody want to make a motion that we endorse the plan and endorse the idea of having this project group under Esteli's leadership?
I'll make the motion. And also, I want to thank Esteli for such an exceptional proposal that is so extensive and so ambitious and so necessary. I thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Angus, thank you.
So I saw Angus make the motion with gratitude and enthusiasm, and Tom second. Georgia said aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Nikki.
Aye.
Hi, Nikki.
Susan. Susan.
Aye.
Aye. David.
Aye.
Aye. Don.
Yes. Aye.
And I am also an aye. So, Esteli, you have our grateful endorsement of this idea, with a lot of other additional ideas to make it even bigger and better in a whole month-long preservation event. There's a lot of work to be done, but we have time. I will say that Clement Durkee, specifically, who couldn't be here today, specifically volunteered to work on this. And what I'm going to do, is there anybody else who wants to really say now that they want to be on a steering committee or a project plan for this and really volunteer to make it happen? Any volunteers who are particularly passionate and feel they have the time?
We have Rita and Marty.
Yeah, we have Rita, Marty, and David is raising his hand.
Yeah.
And Clement is also raising her hand.
Okay, then
I'll introduce you to Clement, Esteli.
We will figure out how to do, because I don't have a Zoom, so I'm going to have to use somebody else's Zoom and set up the meeting.
Exactly. And Great. So thank you, Esther Lee. We'll follow up. We're going to make this happen. And I can't wait for it. I think it will fit into some of our big goals that we're going to refine. I want to say one other thing that I still stupidly skipped over on our exhibit before I asked for a motion to, or on our agenda before I asked for a motion to adjourn, which is the update about our grant with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. We spoke, Holly, we have Betsy and Brian who are our friends of, who are helping us with this. And we've adjusted the scope a little bit of our pre-application. We felt that at the advice of Betsy and Brian, that in addition to producing a survey plan for a $40,000 project, we should also be able to produce some actual surveys. And so we discussed that the NHC, working with Holly, and Betsy and Brian have graciously volunteered to I mean, there's more than time, they have real skill and knowledge, and they're going to give us that effort and help us, that we're going to be identifying the geographies that we want to survey. And this is of the entire NHL, which includes Tecronuck and Muskeget. We're going to identify the resources ahead of time. We considered 3 areas that would be prioritized as the pilot survey. So we're thinking that we're going to hire the consultant. We're going to ask them to confirm the work that we've done. And then we're going to ask them to do a pilot survey, which really will be a complete, like, produce the Form Bs and everything. And we need to pick an area. So we talked, Betsy and Brian suggested that it either be the Fish Lots, New Guinea, or Brant Point. And we discussed the objectives of the pilot, which would be, of course, to survey an area that was a priority area because of at-risk buildings, but also to provide like a real meaty example. And the wisdom of the group was that we should prioritize for the pilot the fish lots, because there are a lot of structures, they are at risk, but also there's a lot of information to be surveyed. There's a lot of information available that could inform the survey, so the consultant would really have the opportunity to become very familiar with the resources available on Nantucket. And we thought with Brant Point, there were fewer structures. They were interesting because they were newer, but it was already getting attention because of coastal resiliency work happening there. With the area of New Guinea, the concern was that it was less well defined and that there was a lot less information. So it might be better to kind of, with the pilot, to work with an area where there was more information and then move on to areas where maybe there was less information. So for those reasons, we thought that fish lots would be the right pilot. Then we identified some project goals. Oh, we got the full survey application from Marblehead, which was fantastic because it was like all written up and we could just go search and replace and modify to make it our own. It makes it a lot easier. And we know that it was successful in what the MHC wanted. So it's a good template. But then Holly and I had a call with the MHC, the deputy SHPO, and it was amazing. He suggested exactly the same thing that we had already decided to do. He said, you know, for a project of this size, you guys could really actually do a pilot survey. It should be a hybrid proposal for both a survey plan and a survey. So we were totally on the same page. And it was basically like a big, awesome, like mutually appreciative meeting where, you know, he actually said at the MHC, we are really, we have no concerns about what this group is going to produce based on what you're telling us now. So huge vote of confidence that our output is going to be meeting their expectations. And also just that they get it, like they're really happy to see this happening on Nantucket as a cultural resource for this Commonwealth, which is, you know, they have their own preservation plan. So, so anyway, it was really the first conversation with them couldn't have gone better. We do have a deadline of delivering this in their office signed on the 9th of February. So we will be showing you a grant or a draft of the grant. Sorry, February 8th, thank you. We will be showing you a draft on January 29th. And yeah, and so we'll hopefully be voting on the draft, and Holly's, you know, steering all of the administrative stuff through groups that need to sign off. We do have $50,000 requested in the budget, so that because this is a reimbursable grant, so we have to, you know, pay for it first and then get reimbursed 50%.
Yeah.
So that's all well underway. We do have a lot of work to do before the 29th, but our goal is to really get the bulk of it signed off on and finished by the 29th so that we have time to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's and mail it so that the physical copy signed is in the office. Yes, Holly.
And as we've had our meeting this morning, you and I received an email from Michael at the SHPO's office, and he said, thinking a bit more about how a hybrid project might be organized, it might make most sense to have separate scopes. So that has added a little bit onto it, but we can handle it. One for the survey and one for the pilot. Yeah.
That makes sense. And he provided examples of the scope. So hopefully we'll just kind of follow what he provided.
Yes, I think it was a very encouraging conversation.
Yeah,
it was really
I just
good.
Can't even tell you, like, I'm so excited about the idea that we might really have this survey plan done and actually start to update our surveys. It's so core to our purpose.
Great work and great news.
Great. Okay, I don't think there's any, I wanted to take everybody's temperature. You know, we've been meeting every 2 weeks because we had like a lot of deliverables, but I think we can probably go back to meeting monthly. What do people think? Holly definitely wants to meet monthly.
I would agree in monthly.
Yeah, monthly. And I'm sure David, who's doing our minutes, wants us to meet monthly.
I like seeing you guys every 2 weeks. The
grinder. So, all right. Well, I'd like to meet monthly because I'm getting a little exhausted, but let's meet in 2 weeks to do our grant and do our, we got a section 106 review and hopefully an update on the streetscape. And I think that's it. Could I have does anybody else have anything that they want to comment on or say? Yes, Tom. Tom, sorry, can you unmute your computer?
You hear me now?
Tom. Yes, we can.
Yep.
I can't hear you. Okay. I got to have one or the other here. What day is it? January what?
29th. At 10 a.m. Yep,
29th.
at 10. Can you mute your phone, Tom?
Yeah, how's that?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Okay, yep. Is that it? Anything else you want to say? No, okay. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if no one else has any other comments.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Angus.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, David. Georgia?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Don? And I am also a yay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great couple weeks, and we'll